We live? Hi everybody, I'm Vanessa from News 8, and joining me here is Dr. Weigel. He is a child and adolescent psychiatrist from Hartford Healthcare. So we are talking about the topic of Fortnite. It is a big sensation. It's huge. It's probably the biggest video game in 2018, right?
Absolutely.
So it's a multiplayer shooting game. That's what it is. 100 players for the Battle Royale version. 100 players are dropped onto an island. And it's kind of like the last man standing. It draws comparisons to the Hunger Games, where one person has to take out everybody on this island and they're crowned the winner. It's really cartoonish though. It doesn't have a lot of blood and gore like some of the other more violent games, which, you know, a lot of these parents are really torn on whether my child should still play it without the blood and gore, though it is still violent. You know, people are still killing each other off essentially at this game.
Absolutely.
In the video game, could be played solo, in a duo, in a trio, a bunch of people together.
Yep, 2 or 4 teams of 2 or 4.
Teams of 2 or 4, and it has cross-platform functionality, which took them actually like 6 years to put together on a technological standpoint.
I didn't know that.
And it's so big, about 45 million players are playing worldwide.
Wow.
If you guys could just comment, show us some likes, whether you know somebody that's playing this game or whether your own child does or whether you do. You know, let us hear, and we are answering your questions all throughout this Facebook Live session. So, Doctor, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
This is a video game that's extensively covered. A lot of people have been looking into it. As a psychiatrist, I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on technology and whether this is good. Which age groups should be playing this game?
Well, the group is rated by the SRB for being appropriate for age 13 and up. However, oftentimes, you know, kids much younger than that are playing. It really is an individual choice on the part of the family as to what if the game is appropriate for their kids. But it is important to know that playing violent games like Fortnite can sometimes have a significant effect on kids. It has been linked in many different studies to aggressive or violent behavior or behavior problems. So something to be aware of, as well as desensitization to violence. And so these are things important to be aware of when deciding whether it's appropriate for your child to play.
Yeah, especially the cartoonish feel of this. I feel like it's really desensitizing. You know, if they kill another player, then it's kind of like a cartoon. There's no blood, no gore. It's really kind of making that elimination a little bit more sensitive.
Right, even though you're still using an assault rifle or another military type weapon. But the bright colors and some of the cartoonish nature of the game, like the victory dances, do make it appeal to younger kids.
Yeah, so those victory dances are actually reflected in real life. A couple of the MLB players are showing them off. I'm sure a lot of students at schools and kids just everywhere are kind of mimicking the look and feel of those Fortnite victory dances.
Yeah, certainly, a number of my patients do.
Yeah. Has Fortnite been the biggest epidemic you've seen with children actually being sucked into this game?
Well, in general, the amount of time that kids are spending on video games in general, in particular, and screens in general, it has been steadily growing for decades. So that the average amount of time that kids spend playing video games now is more than 5 times the amount they were spending at the turn of the century. So it really has sort of been an insidious rise and really changed the landscape of childhood and adolescence, along with social media and along with other forms of screen entertainment.
Do you think the cross-platform functionality that's so unique to Fortnite really is contributing to that addiction? I mean, you could play, you know, on Xbox with a friend who's on an iPhone or someone that's on PlayStation, so you're kind of making that availability a little more easier.
Absolutely.
And you could jump from one device to another, so if a parent shuts off a PlayStation, the child still has it on their iPhone, they could play. So is that really opening up the floodgates even more with cross-platform?
Certainly. I mean, the truth is most players play on their own, but a lot of times kids do like to play together as part of a team or competitively, and it certainly makes it much more inviting to be able to play with a friend and not worry about who has what console or who plays it on PC and that kind of thing. So absolutely, and to be able to move from your Xbox and be able to go play it on your PC in your room, that functionality really matters as well.
Okay, so some parents are really torn because they are saying it's still a social experience for these children. They're still able to talk to one another through microphones. They are able to talk to strangers, unfortunately, with this game. So parents are really torn whether it is a social experience and they should let these kids experience digital media, technology, or whether they shut them off and just go play outside. Do we want to weigh in from you guys? If you comment, do you think your child should be allowed to experience digital media to some degree, or should they just go use their imagination, play outside like the olden days? So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that, for most players, playing a game like Fortnite is harmless fun. However, there are a significant amount of players who enjoy it too much, and they might have a hard time stopping themselves to the point where they're playing the game so much that it can come to dominate their free time. And this can cause a lot of problems in the lives of kids and in adults as well, because when you're spending excessive time playing these games, there are a number of things that you're not giving enough time to, like getting enough sleep, like doing your homework or chores, spending enough time with family, other hobbies, or even just in real life socialization. You mentioned that there is a limited but real socializing that happens in the game, and that's part of the game's draw, and that's part of what makes it engaging. However, we do know from research that those who play the most, those who play excessively, actually end up feeling more lonely, and oftentimes are more subject to having problems with depression and anxiety. And these are the players who have this real addictive habit, where even when they recognize that the game, is causing problems in their life, like their parents are on their back, or they're failing in school, or they're feeling tired a lot, that they are not able to control the amount of time that they play. And unfortunately, these are the kids who resist the most parents trying to help them by controlling their habit. But these are the kids who need it the most. Yeah,
you mentioned a buzzword called vamping. Can you explain what that is to our viewers?
Sure. So this is a term that researchers often use to describe the habit that kids have, that most kids have engaged in to some degree, according to research, which is getting up at night when your parents think you're sleeping and engaging in screen entertainment. So it could be social media, it could be your phone. Oftentimes it is video games, and unfortunately, that even though these games are very exciting, and so kids are really drawn to play them, that excitement that it creates makes it very hard to settle down for sleep. So not only are kids wanting to eschew sleep in order to play the game, but when they actually turn it off, or when they're caught, and a parent turns it off, it actually takes them a lot longer to fall asleep than if they were even just watching a TV show or another less engaging activity.
Yeah, that stimulation will definitely keep the kids up, especially with the blue light, the actual screen too, which isn't very healthy for children to try to go to bed.
Yeah, that is an additive issue. But even compared to blue light from a television screen or something like that, it does take kids longer after playing a video game because they're exciting. They cause increases in blood pressure and heart rate, and when you decide that you've decided you want to go to bed, your mind is still on the battlefield. You're still thinking of ways that you can be the last man standing.
So what's the real difference between Fortnite and, let's say, an addiction to Instagram or Facebook, where people are constantly checking that? Facebook has released a report actually saying that, it causes depression, it causes negative thoughts when you're aimlessly just scrolling through feeds and seeing people at their best, I guess. Yeah. Is there a correlation between video games, social media? Is it kind of grouped under one umbrella?
Yeah, so it depends on how it's defined. The World Health Organization has now announced its intention to officially recognize gaming disorder as an official medical diagnosis. It has yet to do so for a behavioral addiction to social media. However, a number of studies show similar symptoms in both. The loss of control, the decreasing other hobbies, the lying about how much time you're engaging in the activity, and causing problems with relationships and that kind of thing. So there are a lot of similarities. Of course, one big difference is that boys are much more likely to over-engage in video games, and girls are more likely to over-engage with social media. And over time, both put people at a risk for depression and anxiety.
Okay. So what are some of the key signs and symptoms that parents should be worried about, or I guess a red flag for?
So parents should really be, I think, should recognize that these games can sometimes be very habit-forming and over-exciting, over-engaging for their kids, and they should be watching to make sure their kids are making time for a balanced life, making time for adequate sleep. So school-age kids should be getting around 10 hours of sleep at night, and teenagers should be getting around 9 hours a night. But parents should know their kids. They also need to be making time for other hobbies. They should be making time for real-life social engagements, making sure they get their homework and their chores done, and that kind of thing. It's the kids who have a hard time getting off, kids who become very irritable, or sometimes even threatening towards parents. That is sort of a red flag that this is a situation that really needs to be addressed. Parents should also be looking out for, again, kids lying about the amount of time they're spending. They should be on the lookout for kids playing as a way to deal with negative moods, and really should just be keeping an eye on the kids functioning in general. As long as the kids has sort of a healthy, balanced life and they're engaging what they need to, there's not an issue. But for many kids, games like Fortnite can take over and threaten those.
Yeah, exactly. So parents do have the ability to use some parental controls. It depends on the platform. I believe Xbox and PlayStation do offer time caps, so you could restrict access. You could shut off the different apps, or just allow specific times. So are there recommendations for different time periods for screen time depending on age groups?
Yeah, so they're not hard and fast. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends less than 1 or 2 hours a day or less in younger kids. But really, the time depends on the individual. I do think it's important to note that although you're right that those parental control tools can be very, very effective, most of the parents that I deal with, they don't know how to set them. And the last thing that parents should be doing, of course, is asking their kid to help them set those, because that will give the kid the key to unlock it. However, I find that I recommend that parents do a YouTube search for how to set these controls, and that oftentimes is the best way. Also, for PCs, there are programs like NetNanny that function in the same way, or Parental Control Board on a smartphone can do the same thing.
Yeah, we'll have an article up on WTNH.com. I'll explain the different ways where you can monitor your children's actions on apps and how to shut off access, things like that. So stay tuned for that on WTNH.com sometime in the very near future. Should parents be trying this game just to see what the kids are experiencing and why the kids are so hooked? Should they have conversations like, what do you think of this character? Should they be more open and understanding?
That is wonderful. I think that's a great idea. The game doesn't have to necessarily be a point of contention in families, and it's a good idea for parents to understand something that is important to their kid, and also play it for themselves if they're not really sure that the game is right for their youngster. But like you say, it can be great to enjoy a positive experience together as well. Just be warned that the kids will beat you, so it's that can be tough for us parents to take, but a little humility can be good for us too, of course. So, but yeah, absolutely. I think it can be a great thing for parents and kids to share together. Now, unfortunately, there's not a split screen functionality, so parents and kids can't play together at the same time on the same screen. But a lot of times, kids will show you how to play. They might enjoy watching us fail.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, to a degree, it's a good bonding moment. It's a good idea to see what your kid is up to. What is this game all about? Then you can make a better judgment. Of course, parenting is up to everyone as an individual. We're only providing recommendations here through, the Academy of...
I'm a part of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. So that's my connection. We're talking about some of the recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Great. But you're right. Ultimately, each child is different, and so that's why the organizations like those have shied away from hard and fast limits that may not take individual factors into account.
Yeah, and going back to the time, these matches on Fortnite are only about 20 minutes in length. Sometimes a lot shorter. It depends on how quickly you get eliminated. Essentially, if you were just joining us, Fortnite, they drop in 100 people, 100 players into one, kind of like an island, and you have to eliminate the people around you to become the one victor. So that's the Battle Royale version of Fortnite, and we're talking about the safety and the concerns with addiction to games like this, as well as different screen times. And you could comment with your questions. We will answer them as we go. What about physical issues? In addition to the addiction issues, there was a recent story about the Red Sox pitcher David Price. He allegedly had carpal tunnel syndrome because he was so tied into playing this game, so repetitive motions.
Yeah, any what's called a repetitive stress injury is when doing the same motion over and over again, such as pressing a button or texting or something like that, causes strain in a given area. Oftentimes that causes inflammation, and that can cause impingement on the nerves, which can lead to pain and locking and numbness. And so associated with video games in particular is often what's called gamer's thumb, which is pain shooting up on each side of the thumb. But it also can be related to carpal tunnel syndrome, like the pitcher had, or even tennis elbow. These are relatively rare, but this is another great reason that it's good to take breaks while you're playing a game, and that helps avoid that kind of thing. A little stretching can help as well. But even more common than repetitive stress injuries is often back and neck pain, which comes from having poor posture when you're playing. So if you're going to be playing for a long time, it's much better to be on a rigid chair with a flat back, to be sitting with your knees and your waist at 90-degree angles, and to have your hands straight and not bent. If you're using a keyboard, it's important to have support. Playing on a couch, for example, causes a lot of pain and pinched nerves and discomfort associated with that.
Yeah, so with physical pain, there's also the mental pain. So when should parents raise a red flag? When should someone go see a psychiatrist like yourself?
So essentially, it falls upon most parents to play an active role in controlling the amount and managing the amount of screen time that their kids are engaging in, and that can be difficult. Many parents feel like it really kind of takes the joy out of parenting sometimes, but most kids need it. However, if you feel as a parent that you really are not able to sustain limits on the amount of time that your kid is engaging in these, and it's affecting issues in your child's life, or if you feel like you can't safely do it. For example, your child becomes aggressive or tries to hurt themselves or you when you attempt to control the amount of screen time, that is really a red flag that it's time to consult a qualified mental health professional.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to see aggression in these children, especially when that turns into real-life violence, whether it's amongst their parents, their siblings, their friends, schools. It's always best to kind of be on the lookout. So look at those red flags. Again, we'll have something written up on WTNH.com just so you're paying attention to your children's aggression. If they get really mad at you when you take away their iPhone, or if you shut off their Xbox and they're playing Fortnite, maybe it is time to consider seeing someone like, a psychiatrist. We have a couple of comments in here. Melissa said her son is 10, plays Fortnite. Actually, her whole house plays it. He plays it every day, and she watches and listens to him talk to his friends. He's in bed by 8, does his homework before he could play, and she said she sees nothing wrong with today's age with playing. So I guess she's being a very responsible mother. She knows what's happening. She's seeing her son. She's making sure he eats and he goes to bed on time. And hopefully he's not vamping.
Hopefully not. But
And
it sounds
again,
like she's on top of it.
Yeah, so she's on top of it. So again, vamping is when a child wakes up in the middle of the night, sneaks that screen time in, starts playing Fortnite or is on the web. And that's the term for that, if you are interested in that.
Yeah, and it's important to stress that most kids who do play video games, and most don't suffer any significant harm from it. However, there is a significant minority who they really have a hard time controlling their play, and they need their parents' help.
With attention spans being so short, do you predict that kids will move on to a different type of game soon? When do you think this big phase of Fortnite's going to be over? Are they adding more hooks? And they had a new release a couple days ago. So is that really going to keep people really interested in the game?
Yeah, so well, I think that the makers of Fortnite are hoping that it's a long time. Although we can all remember, of course, the Pokemon Go craze of last summer, which was somewhat time limited despite Nintendo's best efforts. So you're absolutely right, though. The game designers are constantly making tweaks to the game to make it more engaging. And just today, they announced that they are going to be investing $100 million in real-world prize money for winning this game. The game already has elements of gambling in it. There are these loot chests that you can open up in the game, and you need to in order to find weapons. And it's very random what you get. It's a little bit like a slot machine in that probably you're just going to get something rather mundane like a shotgun or something like that. But there's a chance that you're going to get something very, very special, very, very powerful that's going to give you a huge edge in the game. And every time you open a chest, there's that possibility. So adding real-world prize money into the game certainly can add to how enticing the game is. At least that's what the creators of Fortnite are hoping.
Yeah, it's definitely those hooks that people keep coming back for more. I've heard that a lot of these app creators do work with psychologists. So they know exactly the triggers that will keep people playing for longer, the different color schemes, the sounds, your experiences throughout that. Is that a great innovation, or one that's, kind of like playing with fire, I guess?
Well, certainly it does creates problems. It makes the games engaging and fun, but it also can make the games too engaging and allow people to develop an addictive habit. So there's a whole theory of behavioral game design, which uses the tenets of psychologist B.F. Skinner in order to get people playing and keep them playing. And these days, the modern game consoles and of course the phones are constantly communicating with the game developer with information about how we play, what keeps us playing longer, and what will cause us to turn it off. So these games are constantly being tweaked here and there to make them more engaging. And again, for most people, that just makes it more fun. But for some people, it makes it a unhealthy or even toxic habit.
Yeah, these app developers really have access to a lot of this data. What time you start playing, how long you start playing, when you get eliminated. All that data pools back to them, and they're able to make tweaks and differences and, upgrade a new version or release a new type of app based on all that. Do you foresee this addiction getting worse with Oculus Go, immersive technology, virtual reality, where people are just encapsulated? They're wearing a device on their heads.
So it does appear to be the future. Is virtual reality is back, and it is much more powerful than it ever has been before. And now, for the first time, these very powerful versions are available, for home use and priced for consumers. I think the PlayStation VR is about $300, and the Oculus Rift is about the same. And certainly, they decrease the real-world cues that a player has that it's time to stop, such as, well, look, the time's getting late, or the sun is down, maybe I need to move on, or the people around you. So I do really worry that the virtual reality games will become even more engaging and habit forming, and harder for players to stop. So my hope is that developers eventually will start to put safeguards in to help their players who overengage. Because right now, players are rewarded for overplaying. The more time you spend playing Fortnite, the better player you are, the more virtual currency you're going to be able to get to purchase things like skins and that kind of stuff. And the higher status you have in the game, there really is not any built-in motivation in the game or for players to have a moderation and to play for a while and then stop. And so my hope is that developers will be held accountable at some point to be able to put in these reminders. Hey, you've been playing the game for 4 hours. You know, maybe it's time to take a break.
Kind of like a Netflix break, where are you still watching? You know, yes or no. I mean, those would be great to implement for video games as well if you've been playing for a marathon amount of time. Oculus Go, I have one. You just get immersed in it. You don't lose track of time. You don't really know where you're walking around, actually, so it's a little scary. But yeah, that's the newest revolution of technology, which is immersive, where you're placed into that land. It looks like everything around you is the place that you're in. So it is a little bit more worrisome for parents down the line, but right now we're just focused on Xbox, PlayStation, iPhone. I mean, it's still screen time. And, you know, your job as a parent, I guess, is to make your own judgment based on what we've been saying tonight. We're going to take some questions now. If you have any, just comment, and we'll read them out loud. We have a lot of supporters here that do play Fortnite that have nothing against it, which is great as long as you're moderating your time on there and being safe. How long have you been looking into video games? And
so that's been an interest of mine for quite some time, for the past decade or so, and being being born into the first generation of gamers myself. You know, I was 10 years old when we got our first video game console, the Atari 2600. So I have that perspective, and then being a parent of 2 kids and managing their enthusiasm for technology has given me another sort of perspective as well. But my focus is mainly for my patients, and I find that more and more issues with technology use and overuse is a significant part of the mental health issues that they're facing, and that it's very important to manage their tech use and their screen entertainment in order for them to lead healthy, happy, and balanced lives.
Yeah, well, to break an addiction such as, you know, addiction to technology or social media or video games, is there medication for that? Is that just repetitive process? What would you say would be the best course of action?
So in treatment, really the best treatment for addiction to technology is very similar to that for the treatment for other types of addictions, like addiction to gambling or addiction to drugs or alcohol. It involves, oftentimes involves the family, a family therapy component, making sure that well-meaning family members aren't enabling the addiction. It involves helping the patient to kind of understand what's important to them in their life and how are their current behaviors either helping them towards those goals or actually getting in the way.
Now, as far as addiction, do you have to be 18 or older to be diagnosed with an actual addiction? Can you be 6 years old and addicted to something?
Well, technically in the United States, there really is not an official diagnosis of video game addiction yet. However, that will change with the new iteration of the World Health Organization's ICD, which includes gaming disorder as a diagnosis. And there is not an age limit associated with that or any other addiction. Okay,
great. I don't think we have any more questions. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
So I think it's important for parents to keep an eye on this, and if they're concerned that excessive video game or tech use is having a negative effect on their child's life, that not to ignore that, and to really look into placing limits so that kids can have a happy and healthy and balanced life. And if you need help, that help is out there, and treatment really does work. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you can't help your child, to consult a qualified mental health professional.
Yeah, absolutely. We will have some more information on WTNH.com, signs and symptoms to look for, how to help your kid, as well as different apps that will help you monitor the use of technology with your children. All right. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.